Hey, you're Mr. Loner, aren't you?
At the high school reunion, a classmate, the son of a president who used to tease me, called out to me. Even though I said I came to talk business, he just smirked and wouldn't listen.
Sure, you'd be over the moon to deal with my company, but what's in it for us?
I realized he must have misunderstood that I was pitching to him. It was a complete miscommunication, but he went on.
You're just that kind of guy. I'll become the president of a big company without lifting a finger, while someone like you, carrying the weight of a shabby factory, is just pitiful in his desperation.
Then he poured me a beer. Well, talking to him is pointless. I decided to quietly leave the place. There's no rush. After all, soon enough, he will realize who I am and regret his actions. My name is John Smith, and I recently turned 50. One day, an invitation to my high school reunion arrived. Looking at the invitation, I couldn't help but grimace. I don't have many fond memories of my high school days, because my nasty classmates used to mock my grandfather's and father's work. My family has run a metal working factory since my grandfather's time, with old equipment, and both my grandfather and father always worked in greasy overalls. Of course, I've always admired my grandfather and father, who were committed to their work and held in high esteem by their clients for their reliable skills, and I'm still proud of them. But because of those mean classmates, I was always ostracized and isolated during high school. I had no one I could call a friend at school, and I thought maybe I should just skip the reunion. But there's someone I want to talk to, and it seems they'll be attending the reunion too. Yeah, maybe I'll just go and check it out. Despite my hesitation, I finally decided to attend. Then, on the day of the reunion, I heard excited voices from the venue. I looked around the room. In the midst of the largest crowd, I spotted a familiar face. He had aged, but there was no mistaking it. That was my classmate, Tom Anderson.
Tom, is that watch you were wearing something you bought overseas?
One of the classmates asked, glancing at the watch on Tom's right wrist. There was a flashy, luxurious watch, ostentatiously displayed.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it was cheaper than buying it in the States. I think it was about $15,000. But this model isn't available in the States. I got it through a special client's quoter.
Well, that's impressive.
Well, it's nothing special, but the view at night from the top-tier local hotel was extraordinary. It was a wonderful experience. Such an experience is something you probably can't get if you live in the States.
It seemed he was telling everyone about his extravagant trip abroad. He tried to act nonchalant, but the smugness was clearly visible on his lean face, as if he couldn't wait to boast about it. Incidentally, being on the shorter side, wearing a watch with heavy and ornate decorations honestly made his stature appear even more meager. The people around him probably noticed this too. However, the classmates flocking around him kept praising him, saying things like "You're the best," and "We are just in a different league, aren't we?" without a hint of sincerity. I can tell it's a totally heartless flattery. But Tom, with a pleased expression, responded, "You guys always flatter me too much," seemingly enjoying the adulation. I sighed as I saw the ridiculous exchange. That's right, they were like this even back in high school. Tom was the son of the president of a large sporting goods company. He was always surrounded by followers and acted like a king. And indeed, he was the very person who mocked me and my family's factory back in high school. He would say things like, "Stay away from him or you'll get dirty," and I was constantly teased. Since no one could resist Tom, the president of a big company, I spent my high school days alone without any friends. Decades have passed, and while their appearances have aged, it seems their behavior and mentality have not changed at all. I was just looking at them from the side, feeling nothing but disdain. Then, at a break in the conversation, Tom suddenly looked my way. Recognizing who I was, he smirked self-deprecatingly. Like a predator finding its prey, Tom slowly approached me. The grin that lifted the corners of his mouth was the same one I remembered from the past.
Well, if it isn't Lonely John, I'm surprised you showed up at the reunion, being such a loner. Got a strong mind, huh?
He intentionally said such things in a loud voice that echoed around us. Tom, giving me a thoroughly condescending look, snorted as if mocking me.
Don't try to show off to everyone by wearing such an exaggerated outfit. That's a fancy foreign brand suit. It must be a rental, but sadly, it doesn't suit you.
While saying this, Tom exaggeratedly shrugged his shoulders and sneered, prompting a ripple of smirks among the crowd.
By the way, you must have taken over that grubby little factory. Oh, I remember. Your grandpa and dad always worked hard in their dirty clothes, sweating away. Even their faces were covered in grime. Yet they'd casually talk to me, which was annoying.
Tom exaggerated his gestures for emphasis. I was irritated by his malicious tone of voice. But considering the crowd and the situation, I refrained from arguing and instead took a deep breath and spoke calmly. Actually, I came here today to talk business with you. Can you spare some time? Indeed, my purpose in attending this reunion was to talk with him. However, upon hearing my proposal, Tom burst out laughing again.
What's that supposed to mean? Are you serious? What the hell does such a rundown factory have to talk about with my big company?
Tom laughed loudly, clutching his stomach. People around him frowned at his loudness. But unfazed, he continued to ridicule, still laughing.
Come on, don't you think you're barking up the wrong tree? Ha ha, sure, you'd be thrilled to deal with a company like ours. But what's in it for us?
His words made me realize. Tom seemed to have misunderstood that I was making a sales pitch. It was a total mismatch, we thought, but wondered how much I could say in such a public setting. However, Tom, taking my silence as a convenience for himself, looked down on me with a smirk and spat out.
Hey, it struck a nerve, and now you're silent. Well, that's just your level. I'm going to be the president of a big company without doing anything, while someone like you, burdened with that rundown factory, is just pitifully desperate.
With that declaration, Tom burst into laughter once again. But seeing him like that, I finally understood. He hasn't been told anything about the major decisions of the company. Tom called me pitiful, but from my point of view, he was far more to be pitied. To reach this age and not realize he's been completely dismissed with a "you don't need to know anything" is quite something. Anyway, talking further seemed like a waste of time. I decided to give him a piece of advice. Hey, Tom.
What?
He seemed slightly taken aback by my sudden formal tone. He acts like a king, but he's probably just a coward at heart. Trying desperately to hide it, He wore a mask of nonchalance. I, as a former classmate, felt compelled to offer some words. In life, you can get anything without effort. There are things that I didn't know doesn't excuse. If you keep turning a blind eye to difficult or unpleasant things, you'll eventually face painful consequences. Right after I finished speaking,
Oi, you! Who do you think you're talking to?
Tom raised a growling shout.
Someone like you, acting all high and mighty. Who do you think you are?
His face turned red with anger as he glared at me fiercely. It seemed my words were not just unwelcome advice, but had also hit a nerve.
Really, it's always been your problem, acting all superior, spouting your so-called truths and lecturing people. I've always hated that about you.
And with that, he threw the contents of his beer mug at me. A splash echoed, and the room went silent. I saw my own bangs dripping water in my vision. It seems I was doused quite dramatically. The smell indicated it was beer.
Are you okay?
At the commotion, a hotel staff quickly came over with a towel, distributing drinks in the ballroom. But while I was wiping my face with a towel, Tom, still angry, was yelling at me.
Damn it, as if you're not rotting away in that crappy factory yourself. The nerve of a nobody like you lecturing me, the future president of a major company, is just unbelievable.
As he said this, Tom stomped on the ground like a child. The hotel staff were earnestly trying to calm him down. I guess it's best for me to leave now to defuse the situation. Feeling like an outsider, I thanked the staff who had shown concern and quietly left the scene. A few days passed. That day, I was at a company for a business meeting. I was led into an impressive reception room. There sat the president of the company and Tom, whom I hadn't seen since the reunion.
Really?
Tom was surprised when I showed up. But his father, the president, quickly stood up and greeted me.
Thank you for coming today.
Tom looked even more astonished, staring at his father beside him. Yes, I was visiting the headquarters of the company run by Tom's father. With my pleasure. I smoothly responded to the president's formal greeting and sat on the sofa. But as we exchanged a few words of small talk, Tom watched us, looking as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Eventually, unable to bear being left out, Tom quietly asked his father beside him.
Hey, today's meeting is with the president of that famous golf club manufacturer, right?
The president looked at Tom with a puzzled expression, as if to say, "What about it now?"
That's right. The person here is the president of the golf club manufacturer. You know him from school, right, Tom? He was your classmate, John Smith. Weren't you guys in the same class?
Tom's mouth fell open in shock.
Huh, is he the president?
That's exactly how it was. Indeed, my family's factory was involved not just in manufacturing industrial goods, but also in making the metal parts for golf clubs. Golf clubs are delicate, with even slight changes in the metal's weight or processing affecting the play. This fine-tuning is challenging even for skilled craftsmen. However, my grandfather's and then my father's factory was renowned for its high-quality craftsmanship, often personally requested by famous golfers. Knowing this, I always wanted to spread our exceptional skills to the world. Initially, I considered following in my father's footsteps as a craftsman. Unfortunately, I've always been clumsy and lacked the talent to succeed my grandfather or father. So, I explored what I could do and eventually proposed launching a new golf club brand. Later, I became the president of a new company, and over the decades, fortunately, we have stabilized at a high performance level, receiving orders from both domestic and international clients, with some items booked up to 3 years in advance. Tom seemed shocked at first to learn I was the president of a well-known company, but his desire to see himself as superior led him to a significant misunderstanding.
Well, John Smith is the president, huh?
He stared at me rudely, and then, with a sly grin, he said,
Oh, I get it. Maybe you want our company to handle your golf clubs.
What?
However, after his son blurted out such a nonsensical statement with apparent pride, it was the president's turn to be taken aback. The president stared at his son for a moment, trying to understand the meaning of the words he had just spoken. Then, with almost a push, he grabbed his son by the collar and made him apologize to me.
I knew you were foolish, but not to this extent. What an impudent way to talk. Who do you think you're speaking to? Apologize right now.
Ow, that hurts.
Tom squirmed as if protesting his father's harshness.
What the heck? Isn't he here asking us for something? Dad, you too. Why are you so humble to such an insignificant person? After all, this is John Smith, right?
At that moment, the president turned deathly pale. Then, more to himself than to his puzzled son, he began to mutter under his breath, as if speaking to himself.
Listen, you may not know this, but this man is going to be the future president of our company.
What?
At those words dropped quietly in the luxurious reception room, Tom blinked rapidly, taken aback.
No way. He's going to be the president of this company.
Tom, who must have believed he would effortlessly inherit the president position, looked utterly baffled, as if hearing a foreign language. Meanwhile, with his son still failing to grasp the situation, the president, filled with resignation, began to speak in a halting manner.
You might not know this, but our company's performance has been deteriorating for years, and we're at a point where recovery is unlikely. However, John saved us from near bankruptcy. His company is acquiring ours.
The president told his son, emphasizing each word as if to make him fully understand.
And they offered us a deal where the management resigns, but all the employees can stay.
That can't be.
Tom seemed to finally comprehend the situation after his father's explanation, momentarily speechless. I watched the scene, shaking my head in disbelief. Truly, he had no idea about the dire situation his father's company was in. Or rather, he probably chose not to know. And his father, seeing no growth in him since high school, had long since given up on him in silence. As proof, the president, leaving his stunned son aside, apologized to me again.
Really, I am deeply sorry for my son's rude behavior. I heard there was a high school reunion recently, and he mentioned meeting John there, so I thought.
Yes, indeed, we did meet then. I recalled, offering a thin, wry smile. We had met, but the circumstances were quite regrettable. Nothing substantial was communicated, and even if we had the chance to talk then, Tom wouldn't have believed anything I said. From my reaction, the president seemed to sense something. The president looked at his son with dismay, anger, and sadness in his eyes.
You are really something.
But at that look, Tom started to rant as if he was outraged.
I'm not at fault. I didn't know, I knew nothing, that the company was in such a state that he would become the president.
The more he ranted, the more the atmosphere in the reception room became tense. For the president, witnessing his son's disgraceful behavior any further must have been agonizing. With that in mind, I slowly began to speak. Robert, there's one more condition I'd like to set for acquiring your company.
Yes, please go ahead.
He responded, nodding obediently. While his son was still causing a scene beside him, I continued, ignoring him deliberately. I said it was okay to retain the employees, but I retract that slightly. I don't need employees who, without trying to know anything, just revel in their own status.
Yes.
The president nodded quietly, and I continued, adding more to what I had said. Also, I cannot accept people who are old enough to not have the decency to pour beer over others' heads. At that moment, Tom, who had been making a fuss, suddenly fell silent. He turned pale, even more so than his father, and trembled in silence. The reception room became quiet, and I concluded matter-of-factly, Robert, please ensure such individuals are properly dealt with before I complete the acquisition. That should be your final duty and responsibility as the president of this company.
Understood.
He said just that, bowing to me with a stern expression. Tom, watching his father's demeanor, remained silent. Now, on to what happened next. Tom, who had complacently relied on his status as the president's son without making any effort or progress, was inevitably ousted from the company. Although he pleaded with his father for help, it seems the president could not protect him without violating the terms I had set for the acquisition. Afterward, Tom was evicted from his luxurious apartment and managed to get by as a part-time worker. I heard he was abandoned by his wife and divorced. On the other hand, I am grappling daily with the challenges of managing the significantly expanded company and safeguarding its employees. Becoming a president means bearing greater responsibilities. I am now faced with the importance of my position and how to leave behind the skills inherited from my grandfather for the future generations. However, I viewed this as a new challenge. As long as one continues to search for paths with calmness and dedication, opportunities will always arise. Armed with the steadfast and earnest spirit passed down from my grandfather and father, I vowed to continue dedicating myself to my